place of religion within the system. As we all know, Israeli family law is partly religious per se. Many aspects of family law are left to the religious law of the parties, explicitly adopting religious norms as part of the Israeli positive law. Moreover, the state recognizes religious tribunals as state courts for many aspects of family law. Most citizens hence find themselves under the jurisdiction of religious courts, notwithstanding their own religiosity or the lack thereof. And what I wish to do today is to utilize or to exploit this quite exceptional situation and experience in order to raise some more conceptual points about the role religion might play within the law in general and within family law in particular, and more specifically to inquire into the nature of religious tribunals. So what I'm trying to do is to try to abstract some conceptual points from the experience of this Middle Eastern Jewish phenomenon, and we will see if you have to say if that resonates with something outside this experience. So for this purpose, I wish to raise a preliminary question. What is it for a court to be religious? What makes a religious tribunal religious? While the answer might seem simple at first hand, I wish to convince you that it is more nuanced and multidimensional. Instead of conducting pure conceptual analysis, I wish to ground the question in a practical field of experience and offer a bottom-up inquiry through the various ways in which a religious system of adjudication really functions under Israeli law. I wish to isolate and portray three ideal types of the religious judge. The aim of this typology is to provide an analytic framework and useful vocabulary to better understand common debates about religious tribunals and their role, as well as maybe also other debates about law and religion. And I term these three ideal types: the judge, the rabbi, and the priest. So let's open with the first and seemingly obvious type that I call the judge. He is interested, and I say he is because in rabbinic courts it's always he, it's never she. So he is interested mainly in applying the right legal norms at the issue at hand, and he tends to believe that religious norms are the right ones. He will seek to apply in adjudicating divorce cases in Israel. He will seek to apply the primary rules of divorce, the primarily Jewish law rules of divorce, examining whether according to Jewish law there is a recognized ground for divorce or not. And then he would sometimes seek to implement the halakhic view regarding the allocation of marital property and custody and child support, and sometimes even utilize the law of divorce in order to implement those other parts of the law which might not be within the court's formal jurisdiction. Thus, for example, the court might insist on the right of a partner to withhold the divorce until other aspects of the separation will be adjudicated according to halakha. In that sense, therefore, in what sense, therefore, is it a religious tribunal? What makes it religious is the fact that the court applies norms that evolved from a religious origin or source, namely that they are given by a particular religious tradition. Note, however, that in principle, the same norms could be formulated also in general secular terms. You can stress stability or commitment or traditional gender roles or other values that are identified with the same way of thinking without being religious. In other words, religion plays a role here as an epistemic source for those normative convictions, but the same convictions can be held without resorting to their religious origin, namely without any religious dimension. One can imagine a civil court applying the same norms. In that case, there is no more reason to resort to religious courts. Anyway, religion has no special role in the way the norms are applied. You can debate these norms on the basis of their content, their own merit. Likewise, if you happen to support these norms, to identify yourself with these norms, namely that the religion happens to match your own convictions, you should not care about the validity of religion as an epistemic source for what is right or wrong. From that perspective, the role of the religious tribunal is only to correctly identify the religious norm, and a religious norm becomes religious due to its origin. Okay, so this is the first model, the judge. The second model is what I termed the rabbi. And as far as I understand, and this is not far enough, but the rabbi-judge distinction roughly parallels the distinction between the Sunnic imam versus Qadi, I think. So what characterizes a religious adjudicator functioning as a rabbi is firstly the focus on the couple's relationship and dispute. Yet it goes beyond the distinction between dispute resolution versus applying the rules. The rabbi counts on his own religious moral authority, trying to convince the parties to act in accordance with the dictates of religion or morality, rather than relying on the official mechanisms of law enforcement. This is where personal morality goes beyond the law. Thus, for instance, the court might encourage a party to act beyond his duties and divorce even in the lack of ground, or alternatively seek reconciliation even when ground exists. And while such a behavior is common also in secular courts, in civil courts, when seeking compromise, the religious nature of the court situates the rabbi in a position that enables him to offer family therapy and consultation as a kind of pastoral advice and religious guidance. He represents, so to speak, what God requires the parties to do, and offers a path to how to become a better person, rather than just how to follow the rules of family law. Similarly, the rabbi might recruit the communal power in order to pressure her husband to do the right thing, through, for example, limiting his ability to join the prayers in the synagogue until he will comply with the court's decision. And I can cite a few examples for that. Now, one who disobeys the rabbi is not only manifesting a contempt of court, he is also a sinner. He is violating the divine command. And within this model, a religious court is a court operating in dimensions beyond the ordinary law, namely speaking to the party's private conscience and drawing its authority from the party's reach for spiritual guidance. The religious nature of the norm and the religious nature of the court serves as a unique reason for compliance. It is not only a matter of choice of law. These features cannot be imitated by secular institutions or adjudicators, even if they would apply the very same norms. In that sense, religious tribunals provide a different sort of courts, not only a different sort of norms. And the third model I want to think about is the religious adjudicator acting as a priest, namely the one who is authorized to perform the sacred rituals. This type of adjudicator, as an ideal type, has no interest in the legal rights of the parties, nor does he have any interest in their moral obligation or the purity of their souls. He sees religious marriage and divorce mainly as a metaphysical issue, and focuses on ensuring that the ritualistic aspects of dissolving the marriage will be followed correctly, in a way that will deliver the expected result of divorce, not only on earth, but also in heavens. An adjudicator acting under such a hat perceives his role and responsibility as assuring that the rite of divorce, the Jewish get, will create a metaphysical separation. His main job is assuring the validity of the divorce from a religious point of view, rather than seeking fair and just divorce or peaceful divorce and so on. Norms of divorce, in that sense, is less about the code of conduct of the parties and more about ritualistic guidance about the proper way to initiate a valid divorce. For that reason, for example, the existence of a minority view that raises a slight doubt about the halachic conclusion might lead the court to refrain from conducting a divorce, even when being totally convinced that divorce is the right thing to do, both legally and morally. Likewise, you can see a tendency in rabbinic courts to think about the party's mental attitude towards a divorce as resembling the requirements of intention in ritual, rather than question of consent or voluntariness. In this spirit, one's decision to divorce is sometimes required to be not only free from coercion, but also pure from ulterior motives. Within this model, religious law has a metaphysical divine nature, concentrating on a ritual which is not accessible to secular reason. Indeed, in a way, the awkwardness of the ritual and its detachment from down-to-earth goals and interests is exactly what signifies its divine nature, and so secular critique strengthens the court's self-image as a protector of the religious sphere. A religious norm is, in that sense, a norm with a religious content, namely a norm that relates to the supernatural or transcendental elements which are unique to the community of believers. This content is rooted in a commitment to a metaphysical worldview about marriage and its implication, rather than an ethical worldview about values such as liberty and commitment, or legal views about the proper structure of society and such. Religious adjudication is religious in the sense that its purpose and function relates to the religious sphere. So much for my basic typology, which I attempt to substantiate through elaborate examples in another place. Now, surely the same person or court can act as a judge, a rabbi, or a priest in the same time, in different contexts and circumstances, and sometimes even in the same contexts or circumstances. And there are surely connections between one's metaphysical, moral, and legal commitments. Yet those roles are distinct. Offering this typology is an analytic tool designed to help us recognize those differences. I wish to claim or to suggest that this typology is not only fruitful as a way for understanding the behavior of Israeli rabbinic courts or even religious tribunals in general. Take, for example, classical debates in state and church relations. Just as a very quick sketch, it might seem that questions about a Rawlsian idea of public reason are more relevant to the judge model, while the priest model seems to be the best candidate for special protection in terms of free exercise or maybe demand for accommodation. And the rabbi model might raise special challenges in terms of disestablishment, but I have no time to go into those details now. I wish just to conclude with utilizing this distinction in order to think about another contemporary contested issue, the question of reproductive rights, in which we will tackle later today, and consider the difference between the following claims. And I will oversimplify for the sake of argument. So think of the following claims about abortion bans. According to the first one, abortion should be banned, since while we might debate in which points something counts as a person rather than only a potential person, God have whispered in my ears that the true answer is that the fetus is considered as such from its very fertilization, hence we should accord the fetus with legal rights. According to a possible second claim, God wants the mother to sacrifice her own interests for the sake of fulfilling her mission in the world or for the greater good, and by doing so, she is manifesting her loyalty to the divine. According to the third option, it is the teaching of the sacred sources that people do not only live in the biological sense, but also have a soul, a metaphysical phenomenon that does not relate to biology and is unique to people among other creatures, and it is this soul which is created at the moment of fertilization. So as you can see, these are different claims in nature. They are not, without saying anything about their validity or so, you can see that they are different in nature, and I think that they correspond with my three types of religious claims, or three ideal types of religious adjudicator. So just to conclude, think for a moment on the following question. Lately, some Jewish organizations have claimed that abortion bans violate Jews' religious rights within the United States. So without trying to offer a full argument here, note only that it seems that this claim has different meaning and different force when considered against each of the above three paradigmatic claims. Requiring someone to adhere to metaphysical views of a different religion is different from requirement to adhere to the morals of this religion, or from accepting the general normative views of this religion. And these three claims thus relate to different questions in the relationship between law and morality, between church and state, and between fellow religions in a given society. Having the threefold typology in mind, we might be able to extrapolate the case of the Israeli Rabbinical courts and gain a clearer picture about the place of various sorts of religious claims in family law and beyond.